About to start and welcome everyone. So this is Simon Phillips. I'm joined once more by Vanda North and Nikki Carew. Hello, ladies. So tonight we're going to be talking about how to build your resilience. And I have to say, I can't think of two better people to really guide you through that process. I've got a few words here on Vanda and Nikki, so I'll hopefully they won't blush too much. But for Vanda, Vanda likes to share practical processes with organizations and individuals all over the world to assist them to function at peak efficiency. Her topics include resilience, stress management, improving brain function with speedy reading, accelerated learning and creativity. Two of her books are Get Ahead, Map Your Way to Success, and Mind Chi, Rewire Your Brain in 8 minutes a day, which she'd never tell you, but I can tell you is now translated into 8 languages, and there are people who are Mind Chi mentors all over the world. And then Nikki Carew has been an executive coach for 20 years, which means that she's been coaching senior leaders in organizations long before coaching was even a recognized intervention. She's an MSc in executive coaching and is accredited by Ashridge Business School. She's co-author of Behind Closed Doors, Stories from the Coaching Room. So there you go. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
There you go. Okay, so I think we're going to start. Let me just check my notes. Yes, we're going to start with the Vanda.
Yes, that's me. And I'm thrilled to be having this opportunity to speak about resilience because it is very dear to my heart. It has become very topical recently, and it's the positive side of the negative of stress and stress management. But let me back up a little bit. When I was growing up, my father was an architect. And so in our house, we were always discussing stress. And it was from the point of view of the weight or the stress, for example, of the ceiling and the roof on the wall, and whether the material was resilient enough or whether it would start to show the strain. And if it started to show the strain, it would often crack up, which seems to be a wonderful parallel for us humans. So we look at the fact that actually we are always stressed. If you are alive, you must be stressed. The light or the lack of it, whether you've had supper or not, how happy you are, every single thing around you, apart from what's also going on, so within you and without, is constantly stressing your body. Now, this can be all right until the point when it begins to take a strain. And that's when it becomes negative. So the stresses are fine. In fact, many of us thrive on various kinds of stresses. But we have to watch very carefully when it becomes a strain. And at that point is where resilience comes in. And the definition of resilience is that you are able to take a stressor, momentarily deform, and then return to where you were. Now, with us humans, that's for materials. For humans, I would say that the parallel is that we should, when something comes along that is a major negative stressor, it is absolutely right to momentarily deform or duck down, to feel sad, to feel angry, to feel whatever is the appropriate emotion. But then what is important, and where resilience is so important, is that you know inside you that although for the moment you might be down there, you will be able to come back up, and you will be stronger, better, have more empathy and wisdom than you ever did before because of what you've gone through. So resilience doesn't take away the hurt or the upset, but it does give you hope that you will be able to get up and go on another day. And that, to me, is absolutely crucial. So let us now begin to look at a resilience questionnaire which I've created. And Simon, if you can pop that one up for us. And I believe it is that you will be able to download this with the modern wonders of technology. And I'm only going to just pick a couple of the ones today for us to discuss. The very first one that I'm going to look at is, do you know anyone who frequently recalls negative episodes? Maybe even you? I used to have a very good friend who, when we would meet, the first 20 minutes would be her telling me about how awful something in the past had been. And she would relive it and go over it all over again. And it really got to the point that I really like her, I enjoy our time, but that first 20 minutes of going through all of this negative really wasn't very good. So it's those kind of things that can reduce your own resilience because you keep recalling it and reliving it, when in actual fact, it's past. And if there's nothing you can do about it, then the thing is to let the past be past. And if there is something you can do about it, then it's to look at, what would I have rather done? If that episode comes up again, how would I have rather acted? What would I have rather said? And those are the things you can focus on to be able to move forward in the future, rather than just rehashing the past, making yourself feel bad, and also making everyone else around you probably not feel so happy as well. Let me also pop in here some of the positives to when you are feeling resilient. And one of the key ones, I think, is that you feel in control. Regardless of what's going on around you, you can actually have that feeling of being in control. Another key one that people say to me is, oh, I'm so tired. I'm always so tired. And part of the plus of being resilient is that you frequently have energy, that you feel that you can enjoy and really participate in life. You feel mentally strong. Generally, a resilient person has better general health. And you feel hopeful and motivated. Your self-confidence is usually higher, and your leadership skills of yourself, as well as anything else and anyone else that you need to lead, is also improved. And the final one I'll share came actually from one of the people in one of my courses. She said, it allows me to re-perspectivize. Now that's quite a word, but you have a perspective, and what you can do is shift it. And the shift is enough to change you to feeling resilient and that life can work for you. You can download this questionnaire, and then we can work through it with you, and I will be happy to get back to you and let you know what are the resilient responses. Can we go to the second slide, which is looking at your resilience meter? Now, this is quite a bit of fun because what you see is a whole scale. You can go right the way from joy in the far right-hand side. Please notice there's quite a large section in the middle, which is where you're okay. And then you just begin to slide down into the strain beginning to show right the way through to when you are in burnout. And if anyone listening and watching is thinking that they're getting to burnout, may I please say, do something now, the greatest of urgency, because getting to burnout is a lot longer and harder of a journey back up again. But when you look at this resilience meter, and I think again you could download this as well, just think for a while, where might you be on that scale when you would make your best decisions? It's not always that you want to be way over on the right-hand side for joy. Where would you make your best decisions? Where might you maybe most creative? Where would you do your best deep thinking and relaxing? And so what we have here is a way for you to look at, what is it that I most want to do, and where would I be on my resilience meter to be able to do that with the greatest of ease. So it's for you to just maybe stick up somewhere in your office, in your home, and just have a glance at every now and then to pick your spot so you're ready to be at your peak performance. And now after that, I think that Nikki is going to talk about bounceability.
Oh, Bounceability. Love that. Love that, Nita. I think that's really, really powerful to decide where you're going to choose your best decisions best. I think that's really interesting.
Thank you.
But for me, I think I work a lot in the business world, and resilience is such hot news right now. One of my favourite headlines from a blog lately was from Rosabeth Moss-Kanter, who said, "Surprises are the new normal, and resilience is the new skill." And so, I mean, what does that mean for you and me? Times are actually really challenging right now. Employers are seeking employees to be resilient. They keep using that word. But it is a crucial characteristic of high performers. So more than education, more than experience, more than training, your level of resilience will determine your level of success. And that could be in sport, it could be dealing with chronic illness, but it's particularly in business. So resilience is the way of dealing with these changes in life. It can be positive, it can be negative. But change, when it happens, does tend to rock the status quo some. And the status quo is that lovely, peaceful part of knowing what's going to happen next. But change shakes us up. It makes us rethink and do something different. And what you choose to do different actually does indicate how resilient you are. You could go back to bed, but that probably means you're not very resilient. You could go for a walk to clear your mind and decide what to do. You're quite resilient, you're working it out. And you can decide to tackle the problem head on, and that's really resilient. And you'll probably have different resiliences for different issues. I used to work at Sainsbury's, and David Sainsbury would say at the time he was mindful that many people have very demanding and chaotic home lives, and they come to work at Sainsbury's and don't want to be challenged. So he supports these people with secure and perhaps less demanding work, because he recognised that maybe all their resilience was used up at home. Others of us quite enjoy a complex work life that truly challenges our resilience daily. So everybody is using resilience. We all have a certain amount of resilience. Every time you fell off a bike, got back on because you wanted to learn to ride a bike, that's resilience. When you're pipped for that flat that you wanted to rent, you picked up the paper again and kept looking. When you were running for that 5K and just got to 3K, you had to push yourself through. That's resilience. So we all have it. And children, wonderfully resilient. They face challenges as learning moments, and we applaud them and we encourage them to walk, and we encourage them to try harder in exams. And somewhere along the line, we lose a bit of that wisdom. One of my favourite spectator sports is tennis. And tennis is fascinating because it can turn on a point. And the players have to believe that, because a tennis player who dwells on the loss of a point can lose the whole game. And I think resilience can be defined partly by that time between that dreadful feeling of failing, losing a point, and that wonderful feeling of having gained something from it. And the shorter it is, maybe the more resilient you are at that moment. So for me, resilience, when you're more resilient, you're more able to spot opportunities. It can strengthen your problem-solving ability. It can help you adopt more assertiveness, better negotiating skills. You're more likely to procrastinate less, get that action plan going, and you grow and evolve with change. So, and that is attractive to both you, for us, to cope with daily stresses and the big knocks of life, and really to employers who need their workforce to be able to cope with organizational changes and the difficulties. So, how do you cope? This is a similar view to Vanda's with a slightly different twist on it. How do you cope with being stretched and challenged and learn and better at bouncing back? So it's not just how you deal with that moment, that challenging moment, but how you grow in the aftermath, the takeaways, what you're going to take away from that experience. And that way we can grow a capacity to change before that change becomes an imperative and we have to do something about it. So we can all grow our resilience. And for me right now, the perfect example of extreme resilience in my mind has got to be Hillary Clinton. She's publicly dealt with some incredibly high-profile knocks. She even then decided to run for Democratic nomination against Obama in 2008, and she lost. And most people at that situation bow out. They've been rejected by the voters. But she put that behind her. She fought back. She accepted the role of Secretary of State under Obama. She took a long, hard look at whether or not she wanted to fight for presidency again. And look, here she is, front runner for the candidacy. And who knows? She might be president in 2016. So researchers have identified this thing called stress inoculation. And that means that, in actual fact, modest levels of adversity can force people to draw on inner resources. And they know now that even traumatic events seem to increase people's resilience, because they know things like after an earthquake or one of those big disasters, suicide rates plummet because people have built this stress inoculation about having to deal with these things and get them going. So I'm not pretending that growing resilience isn't hard. We've all got a little trick up our sleeve to feel better and resist change. It's usually a momentary comfort. It could be a chocolate biscuit, a glass of wine, going for a jog even. Ultimately, it doesn't solve the problem and can lead to disillusionment. So when I coach with people, I'm often brought in, and they have been thrown off balance. And one of the jobs I need to do with them is to help them have confidence to confront some of the painful realities. And some of the paths that we have to go through is they have to come to have a faith that there is a solution will appear when it isn't clear that it will. They need a bit of tenacity to carry on if they're feeling hopeless. And this is something I need to help them with. To help them recognize that there are choices open to them and understanding what the costs of those choices and their options are. And we need to realize what we might need to let go. So also what's getting in the way of what would be getting in the way of my resilience. So change can be a life force. After change, you can become more agile or you can become more rigid. You can become stronger or weaker, perhaps. You can become comfortable in ambiguity, or you can constantly seek predictability, better or bitter. So obviously we'd like to help you see how you can find greater sustained resilience to be more agile, stronger, change-ready, and more resourceful. And Vanda, you're the woman to take us through this with the Mind Chi.
Thank you, Nikki. Yes, I'm going to give just one way of looking at how to monitor how your energy is going, and therefore whether it might be slowly sapping your resilience or whether it is slowly building your resilience. And before we look at the slide, I'd like to just have everybody think about, are there certain people in their lives who, when they think about getting together with them, they can almost feel, that's going to be an effort. It's the kind of person that it's almost as if they put an electric socket in you and they're just sucking the energy right out of you. Sometimes it's a place that you may have to go. And as soon as you turn the corner and see it, you go, Sometimes it's an activity that you have to do, and you put it aside for as long as possible until it becomes quite a disaster. So there's a whole bunch of things, people, activities, and places that can sap our energy. On the other side, there's a whole bunch of people who, when you think of them, you think, yes, let me have a cup of coffee with them, let me have a chat, let me just even pick up the phone and say hi, because you know you're going to feel as if you've just had a tank top up of energy when you do that. There are certain places, for me it's, for example, like going to the beach or being in nature, when as soon as you've got there, you just go, ah, yes, and you can feel the energy and the resilience returning. And there are certain things that you can do that make you feel more resilient. So I was thinking about this, and Simon, if you can show the mental energy scale for us, that would be super. And I've come up with what originally looks like a rather boring something, a form, a chart. And I'd like you to look at this. So across, under the Mindchi energy scale, on the right-hand side as you look at it, it says fill in for a day, week, or month. So I don't know how busy you are. You may want to take just a day. For most people, it's good to do it for about a week, or you may, if you're not got a lot of things, you may go for a month. Then you look at the various lines. Can be an activity, a person, or people, and other, anything else that isn't one of those two. And in those little diagonal, in those little rectangular blocks across the top, you would put down a few words as to what the person's name is or what the activity is. Now, if you come down to around the middle of that chart, that would be a zero line of no energy coming in and no energy going out. If it is someone that gives you energy, then that will be up on the scale, depending from 0 to 100. How energized do you feel you are? And obviously this is a subjective thing, but then so is your energy. So you would give a scale as to, oh, I feel this about it. Say there's something you have to do, like completing your income tax. Maybe that is down on the negative side as an activity that doesn't fill you with a great deal of excitement. And so you'd go from that middle line and you'd go down 0 to 100, depending on how awful you think that is. But now, Simon, if you can show us the next one, let me show you an example that I did of one of mine. And the reality is in life that nearly everything has some that goes up and quite often a bit that is underneath as well. So for taxes, for example, it may be that there's quite a bit of negative, but when I've done them, wow, do I feel good. And if I end up not paying an awful lot of money, I go into the positive. And if I end up getting some money back, well, I'm off the scale of happiness, and I'm really excited to get them done to see whether that is what works out. Even with people, for example, I was telling you earlier about my colleague who always would speak negatively for the first 20 minutes or so, but I really loved her and really enjoyed our time together. So there was a big chunk of positive, but there was that initial chunk of negative. And so most things in life have a little bit of both positive and negative. The important thing is just to look ahead for whatever time you have selected and put those things on your chart and then look at what does that say. Because what it does is very quickly and easily give you an immediate, powerful graphic for, is your energy going to be sapped, taken away, and therefore likelihood of your resilience being lower during this next week? Or is your energy going to be fine and well boosted and in good state for the next week? And if you find you've got a week with an awful lot of negative things going on, and it does often see that life gives us a bunch of those all at one time when our resilience seems to be really tested, then what you can do is go, ah, right, what I need to do is to put in some of my energy boosters. Who shall I phone? Shall I take myself a nice long bath for a little while? What shall I do to give me that feeling of counterbalancing all the negative? And I have a wonderful piece of extra news, and that is that it's quite amazing that even if you look at a dominantly negative week, the fact that you stopped to take care of yourself by giving yourself some boosters doesn't mean that it needs to be much. Just a few energy boosters can help you to counterbalance that negative. But the important thing is that you've looked at it, you've realized where you are and where you're going, and you've taken control very simply and very easily, that your resilience isn't slowly sapped away from you. And so I hope that this might be of some help to everybody who's listening and watching. If you've got any questions or suggestions, please let me know. It's simple, but it's very, very powerful, and that's just what I like. I just saw a statistic as just a few minutes ago, and it said that there's 1 million people who are depressed and 2 million people who are anxious. And so we are so needed to find these simple, doable, practical, easy to put into your life ways of starting to counterbalance all of those negatives that so many people are having to deal with. And to help us on our way, I think Nikki has got a 5-point career plan to zoom us in that direction.
Yep. Thank you very much, Vanda. Yes, mine is very much a career resilience and growth plan. Coping with the setbacks and to recovering quickly. And my first point is very much follows on from Vanda's, because you can decide to have a bright view of life. You can choose optimism. People are not born to be optimists, they're not born to be pessimists. You become one. And resilience takes advantage of the most useful of the childlike qualities that we're born with. They're non-judgmental. You see things as they are. They're incredibly creative. They get up again when they fall over. So here's how I suggest to you that you can become more optimistic. So keep a journal and remind yourself what you've done that's great or right in the day. It's so easily forgotten. What positive things did your boss say? How did you support your colleagues? What did you do to affect some change that was necessary? And then you can read these and remind yourself when you're down. And boy, when it's your appraisal time and you want to ask for that salary increase, you can come armed with the evidence too. And I'm not going to pretend you won't still have nagging thoughts, even if you consider yourself to be an optimist. Worries do go round and round in your mind. Write those down too, but somewhere else. Don't contaminate that optimist journal. Write it down still. It's really helpful to dump it, and you can either do something about it or you can let it go. It doesn't mean that you don't have strong feelings, but when you experience them, you can focus a little bit more and express it in a way that doesn't detract from your overall mission. And when I'm clearing a drawer out and I find one of these pieces of paper, it does make me laugh to see how far past that worry I've gone. I think to recognize also what does make you personally vulnerable. There are things. Maybe pay attention to when your heart is racing or when you feel really uncomfortable. You need to accept this about yourself. We all have vulnerabilities. And if you have self-insight, it can help you get through tougher times by, at that point, looking after yourself. You can go and have that lovely bath that Vanda said, or ask for help. Sometimes we need to ask for help and get support. You don't have to do this all on your own. Another side to that would be to assign a different meaning to adversity. Remember how it felt when you achieved something amazing. What happened along the way to that achievement? There were probably some setbacks. And the more setbacks there were, maybe the more amazing you felt at the end. I wish I had £1 for every person who told me after I'd gone through a redundancy exercise with them, once they got the new job that probably better fitted their needs, it was the best thing that ever happened to them. But they didn't feel like that at the time. So my first point is boost your optimism. My second point is about engaging in the big picture. Resilience is low when you're having a tough time, and it's sometimes hard to see past this week. But do you know what you want in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years' time? How is what's happening now to you contribute to the big plan? Maybe putting up with long hours to put money in the bank for a better mortgage or a house. That's a plan. Or maybe you don't want a bigger house and it's not a priority, but you want to passionately start up a fashion business, in which case you might put up with the long hours to learn the trade. Or you might want more time with your family, in which case long hours is unacceptable and you might need to change jobs. So by committing to your long-term goal, having a vision, you can rationally choose the right behaviors to achieve your goals. So that's my third one, engaging in the big picture. The second one, rather. The third one is about creating positive relationships. You don't need to wait until you need them. Start now. Who do you know that you haven't made contact with lately? Remember how you feel when somebody reaches out after a gap to you. You feel delighted. Why deny somebody else that feeling? Look externally and seek and listen to people with different perspectives and give and accept support. Find a mentor. If you do this, this can enrich all parts of your life, and one will pay dividends. Literally, it will pay dividends in your career. In business, it's given this scary title, networking. But we haven't got time to do a networker's charter now, but I'm going to tell you a secret. The best book written about this is, I don't know whether you can see that, The Complete Guide to Professional Networking, written by our very own changemaker, Simon Phillips. Yeah, that's the book to get. Number 4, learn something new. Anything. Learning something new can give you a part of your life where you can choose how to stretch yourself. Give yourself the pace that you want to work in. It's also a distraction and will enrich other parts of your life as you spot connections. One client of mine was an athlete in her student days, a top athlete actually, and she was under considerable stress at the time when we started working together. And she found strength in revisiting that experience she had as an athlete, about that pressured environment that she had, and she remembered the sense of achievement and the emotional highs that she got when she won the events that she was in. So I think that's an important one to hang on to too. And the final one, some of the most resilient people I know are entrepreneurs. They seem willing to take knocks for this greater vision. So the 5th point in my plan is to look at the world like you're an entrepreneur. And that's sort of about owning your career. What do you want from it? Spend time planning your career in a way like people plan their annual holidays. They spend a lot of time looking at it. But if you're not planning your career, then that holiday takes all important meaning because you're exhausted. So own your career. And even if you work in a very big organization, you can still manage your career like a one-person business. You don't have to be, or feel rather, like a cog in the machine. So take control of your career, and here's some questions I think you should know how to answer. What is your business? What is your purpose? Here we have make change happen. And I love that. So long as I have that in my mind, I feel connected doing what I do. I also think, what is your brand? Brand is about what are your strengths and when are you most effective. What do you do best? What makes you stand out from the crowd? Or maybe, what is it you want to make people see that makes you unique? These things all come together and become your personal brand. And if you've been keeping that journal I've mentioned before, then you should have a clearer picture of what that might be. And I think another part of being an entrepreneur is understanding who are your customers and what are they paying for. So you might be ensuring a vulnerable old person gets the support they need. Or you might make a widget that keeps cars on the road. or you might make sure the company's finances and cash flow are strong. So when people ask you what you do, maybe that's what you should tell them, not I just work in an office. And finally, now that you know what you do and what is your brand, how do you add value? Every employer is looking for the competitive edge to keep their head above water and adding value. So you too can do this. Do you sit on a committee? Have you had an idea about making something efficient but didn't think it was worth mentioning? Can you mentor a junior person? So all those things are about adding value. There's also a point about thinking like the person you're communicating with. What are their problems? What are your boss's problems? She has to deliver something to her boss, and you can take responsibility for how you communicate so that you get across your point most effectively. I once worked with a very well-known financial services company. It was a big redundancy exercise, and they were making people redundant right across the company. So we started with the post room and the clerical workers, and they told us they felt that they were the lucky ones, that they felt sorry for the people who were left behind and being bullied by the supervisors. And then we worked with the supervisors. And the supervisors felt really sorry for those remaining behind who were being bullied by the managers. And in turn, the managers said they were sorry for the people who were left behind bullied by the directors. And so it went on, until we got to the board member who told us that he was lucky to get out of the clutches of the bullying MD. No one at any level in that group felt empowered to break the trend of that emotional contagion. You can take control of that. So that's my 5-point plan. I think the slide is up so you can see it. Boost your optimism, engage in the big picture, get connected with positive people, learn something new, and be your own entrepreneur. And finally, I want to share with you my favorite quote from the much missed Zig Ziglar. And it's not how far you fall, but how high you bounce that counts. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions for Vanda and me.
Well, have we lost Simon? No, there he is.
Here I am. I'm just going to stop presenting that that slide for a moment. Yeah, thank you, Nikki and Vanda. I think that was brilliant. I was making quite a few notes here, and we've got a few questions that have come in before the session. Now, what's typically happening on our webinars is that most people are watching this in replay. So if that's you right now, if you're watching this in replay, feel free to put your questions into the chat box at this point, and because we will get them, and Vanda and Nikki will absolutely respond to all of the questions that come in. So if you're watching on replay, please feel free to do that. Now, before we come back to the questions and answers, I've got a little program that I want to share with you, which Vanda and I will be delivering over the next month or two. So Vanda, would you like to just give everybody a little bit of background to the Mindchi Resilience Program?
I'd be delighted. First of all, what we've tried to do is to put a great deal in one package for people to really kickstart them with managing the strain from stress and building their resilience, both in one package. So the first two parts of the program will really be based mostly on the Mindchi book. And the Mindchi book provides, or the Mindchi routine provides for you 8 simple steps. Each step only takes a minute. And those 8 steps built together and done as a routine over time give you immense strength and power to fight back against the ravages of all of the negative things that we've been talking about. It gives you that bounceability that lovely Zig Ziglar quote was talking about. It's a way to be able to combat. And we've been doing and sharing the Mindchi Basic 8 routine all over the world. As you mentioned, there are people trained to train. It's very easy to learn. We'll teach it to you, and then you can practice it for yourself That's the best thing to do. And then people will suddenly start to say, "My, how are you managing so well? What's happened? You don't look nearly so stressed as you were." And that's when you can say, "Hello, this is what I'm doing. Come on board and do it with me," because we love it when people share these things. So that's part one and part two. But then I began thinking, and we are all different. Our temperaments are different. And we were saying this morning in the program on well-being that one size doesn't fit all. We all have our own ways of responding. So a stressor comes into the middle of a family or a group or a team in an office, and each person will have their own reaction to that. So I was thinking, how can I acknowledge the different temperaments that people have and allow them to create for themselves a way to make bespoke resilient strategies just for them. And so we mentioned some of these things today. We look specifically at what are your dominant temperamental styles, knowing that all of us can be all of them if we need to be. And there again is a resilient strategy, is just knowing, because I might be one kind of person normally, in another situation, if necessary, I can pull on other kinds of ways of being. And it's very powerful to know this. And then you build for yourself these 8 strategies so that at a moment's notice, you are able to look at a situation and adjust and think, what am I going to do? How can I take care of myself? How can I stop myself from going too far down towards the burnout on that meter I showed earlier? How can I start pushing myself positively back into the stronger, better, more joyful area of functioning? So that's a map just covering the 4 main things that we're going to be doing in those 4 webinar sessions.
Thank you, Vanda. And Joe, just a little bit more detail for you. You can tell our marketing guys have been working on this, but it really is, I can assure you, even better than what they're saying here. It's a new, unique way to banish strain from stress and build your resilience. For the first time, a 4-session webinar introducing you to the world-famous MindQi 8-minute brain rewiring coping strategy. And we've included the opportunity for you to create 8 bespoke resilience strategies based on your own temperament, as Vanda said. So part 1, just to reiterate, is all about grabbing the reins of control over you, both physically and mentally. Part 2 will be mastering being present, the gift of now, as we like to call it. Plan your beingness and gratitude. Part 3 is to develop your resilient colors and build awareness of your energy drainers. And part 4 is your opportunity to build your energy, balance your energy, be at your peak, resilient, and have an amazingly resilient beat. So that's really what the program is all about. And you can grab one of those this evening. I'm just going to load up the offer here. And for those of you watching on the replay, you should also be able to click that offer there and go through and find out more about the program for yourselves. So we're going to stop talking about the program there. Vanda and I would be delighted to see some of you on that program, and we hope we can support you in developing your own personalized resilience program. And now I'd just like to hand it over to you guys to ask some questions, and I'm going to pop one up on the screen here that came in earlier. Let me just see if I can spot it. Oh yeah, it was back to the very start of this this talk, really. So this one came in earlier, which is, how do I benefit from being resilient? I mean, you've sort of covered it a little bit, but if you had a short, succinct answer to how do I benefit from being resilient, what would that be? Nikki, you have a go at that one.
I think for me, I think there's something about being resilient gives you security. I think it's security to have a way of approaching life that's going to serve you well. You can't stop these things happening in life. In fact, if you did, you would be bored. So For me, it's security of handling the knocks and the challenges you're going to get to with life and come out better. That would be my message.
Excellent. Vanda?
I would agree with that, and I would add it's hope. In the darkest moments when your face has got smashed into the mud for the third time, and you really wonder whether you will ever be able to master the strength to get back up again, it is that hope. It's that little iron rod, I call it, that thing, that handle that I can hold on to, that I know I can pull myself back up. And when you function with resilience, I think it makes you feel quietly and deeply, contentedly joyful. And that's pretty good.
Excellent. Okay. Got a question here from Jax. Typically, how many coaching sessions would a person need? And presumably that's talking about before they would feel absolutely resilient. Vanda, you're on the screen.
Oh, okay. Am I? All right. I would usually say about 8 as a start off. It depends, obviously, that's a little bit of, how long is a piece of string. But normally what I do is work in 4s or 8s, see how deep the problem seems to be, what the person wants to achieve, and then divide it up like that. So that's how I do it. What about you, Nikki?
Well, I think that's very sensible. For me, coaching is about working with an individual and going along the journey with them. It's what makes it such a special kind of learning process. So you want to have it over a particularly, an extended piece of time so that they can put into practice some of the things that we talk about, and then come back on them, and then we review them, and we reflect, and we develop some insight. And it will be, as Vanda says, it really depends on what are the issues that person's dealing with. But typically, funnily enough, I don't know why I seem to always go on odd numbers. So I'm always going 5, 7, 9. So it's interesting you do even numbers. I don't know what that tells us about ourselves, but I think that's probably about right. Sometimes it's over a sort of 4 to 6 month period.
Excellent. And a question from Nigel. Is resilience about perspective? And if so, how do we maintain perspective? Nikki, you're on the screen this time.
Perspective. I guess it is about perspective, because what is a challenge to me that I might find quite a difficult challenge to deal with, somebody else will pick up with relish. So it is about perspective, but I think we've all got our levels of where we hit that stress moment. And if you can have that optimistic, if you can go back into that mindset of being optimistic and maybe use some of the mind chi, you will change your perspective. But sometimes you won't, and I don't want everybody to give themselves a hard time and think everybody should be optimistic. There are times when you need to say enough, and I need to look after myself now, and I've hit my level. So in that way, everybody's going to be on a different part of that scale, and if you can change your perspective, do. If you can't, let's get some coaching, or let's look at another way of going about something.
Excellent.
I would add to that is one of the biggest effective things, but also not so easy to do, is to become more aware, to build your awareness of how do you respond, how are you thinking, kind of stop, pull it out, take a look at it, and say, is this helping me or hindering me? Because so many of us run so much of our life frequently on habits and patterns and things that we've learned maybe even from childhood, and we've just taken them with us without ever questioning them. So I would say first comes awareness, then you can decide, do I need to shift my perspective? Because if things aren't working for me, then just like changing a clothing and trying on something, try a new perspective. See what happens. See how people respond to you. See how you feel with this new perspective on. And I had to laugh at the person who'd gone through my course and came up with this, that she felt that she could now re-perspectivize. And I can't say that very easily, but just the thought that you could take your perspective and look at it and decide, is it serving me, or do I want to go back and try on another one? And use it as a light thing, not a heavy thing, not a big serious thing. Let me try this. Let's see if it works better than where I am at the moment.
Interesting, interesting. I think we've got one. Let's take one last question. Oh, interesting one. Okay. So, what is your personal biggest resilience booster? That's a nice way to end the evening.
For us, I wonder if you mean. I wonder if Jax means our personal ones. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
so what's yours, Nikki?
I have no doubt about that. I have to get out into the garden, and I have to get my hands in the dirt, and I completely puts everything back into perspective. And the only thing I lose perspective on that is when my certain plants don't grow, and that upsets me terribly. But apart from that, or when the badger gets in and eats my carrots, that's I lose my perspective on that point. But apart from that, going into the garden.
Excellent. Vanda.
Well, I can't believe this, but Nikki, I'm afraid mine is the same. I'm never so happy as when I'm upside down, fiddling around in the earth, moving the weeds from here to there, loving my plants and my flowers. One of the activities we do is to look at all of the boosters that people have, and it is a real fun thing for everybody who's listening and watching to do. Just start to think about all the things that make you feel positive and boost your resilience. And the list, for me, goes on and on and on and on. And that I feel is such a gift, because there are so many different things. If it's pouring with rain, I can still go for a walk on the beach. I can talk to my dear husband. I can call a friend. I can read a book. I can do one of my crafts and things. There's so many things. And I think the thing is to look at what does it for you, and then build that map so that you got it there. And if you're feeling a little dented, you go, oh, that's what I can do today. I'll do one of them.
Excellent. I think it's a great question, because the one thing I found with this is, I know you guys mentioned it earlier in terms of one size doesn't fit all, and this is usually one that does bring out the different temperaments, the different desires that people have. So actually, Jax has put there, uplifting music is her go-to booster, so uplifting music for her, it's gardening for you too. For me, it's time spent with family and friends. That's the real big energizer for me. However, I was looking at one of my colleagues' Facebook updates earlier, and in there he'd written an article about what he does to recuperate, and in there for him it's all really active stuff. So it's out, doing adventure holidays and sporting holidays, which for some people they would look at that and think, well, I'd be exhausted before I even got on the airplane. But it's perfect for him. So yeah, excellent. Okay, well, it really just remains for me to say, oh, there we are, Nigel saying going for a run does it for him. So excellent. So tomorrow morning at noon, the inimitable Nikki Carew will be back, and this time with Simon Hardacre, and they'll be discussing how to develop a high-performance culture in your organization. So for those of you inside an organization and looking to develop that, just an environment where everything just works and people are focused and engaged, they're going to explain how you go about developing that sort of culture. So really looking forward to that. Everybody on the call this evening, and those of you watching on the replay, I'll send you the link for that this evening before we wrap up. But other than that, it just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Nikki and Vanda for what I think have been two fantastic webinars today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Excellent. Okay. There's Nikki and there's Vanda, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.